This is my project, The Ecology of the Network, a response to Jeff Rice's Digital Detroit, Part 2. I'm interested in imagining Rice's network concept as an ecosystem. Ecology, and ecosystems in particular, is often discussed in terms of networks. Species make up the nodes, and the links between them depict their relationships. By looking at a map of such a network, ecologists can interpret the connections and get an idea of the health of an ecosystem. Each species has a rhetoric in its interrelation and interaction with the other species around it, as well as the geographic habitat itself, which some people generally discount but is in fact a part of an ecosystem. If any one species is upset in some way, the effects reverberate through the rest of the network, and if a node is removed, all the relationships can be disturbed. Similarly, when an individual adds something to the digital network Rice describes, that can change the relationships in every part of the network, can even alter the tone of the network overall, or at least aim it in a new direction. That's really what Rice is accomplishing in Digital Detroit. He's making a big contribution to the network, one that will likely inspire major changes. Ecology holds a concept of species interaction that deals with what's called a keystone species. Keystone species connect the other species around them in ways that turn out to be vital to the health of the ecosystem as a whole. Oysters are one of these. If the oysters are removed, then clean water and habitat is also lost, and the other nodes in the network are impacted greatly. For the digital world, a keystone node might be Google or Twitter. Can you imagine them being removed from the network? Or scarier still, online banking or electronic infrastructure. Losing these nodes would have a similar impact to what would happen to estuaries if oysters became extinct. The concept of a holistic, harmonious natural world, referred to as eco-holism, has been defenestrated as the guiding assumption of ecology. The natural world is instead considered dynamic, operating in cycles that are similar but never the same twice, thriving on destructive natural events as a kind of reset button, mutating in productive ways. Rice's network likewise functions on the constant of change. Every day sees thousands of alterations in the digitscape, meanings and interpretations accreted, some built and others abandoned incessantly. As in the natural world, in the digital landscape, things that don't evolve are soon dead. Rice points out that the connections themselves are not necessarily the significant aspect of the network, but the links between them and the effects they can have on each other. The mobility of meanings is the currency of the system. Diversity and adaptation make a digital ecosystem strong. Gene Eidson's Intelligent River project, which Vernon Burton discussed with us in his talk back in August, has mapped the Savannah River as a digital environment by placing remote sensors along the river and its watershed, which includes the Greenville area, so that scientists can monitor everything from water quality and runoff to tree growth, all online. This kind of digital mapping is very like what Rice accomplishes in Digital Detroit, only here we have a more traditional ecosystem mapped and monitored. The Savannah River is a concern because of its importance in providing clean water for the heavily populated areas in both Georgia and South Carolina, and in conveying that water to the coast. The Intelligent River project allows greater community participation in what's happening in, around, and to the Savannah River, thus significantly expanding its network and adding it to more people's databases. The river is a mere topos no longer, but is now digitized and incorporates a far more diverse Cora. The Clemson World magazine featuring the project even uses the heading "Communicating with the River," implying that there is an exchange. Most of what is presented in that section is focused on what the river tells us, but we are also telling the river something when we build an interstate or a city beside it, and our communication affects its network. What we often aren't open to is the idea that the river actually does talk back, but not in ways we generally accept as communication. We readily interpret the scientific data we collect, but we see ourselves as its keepers, managers, masters, and imagine it in terms of it needing us to survive now because of, well, us and our careless activities. We bring the river to its state of pollution and brokenness, then we notice that it's negatively impacting our lives and start trying to control it. But the river is a network of so many nodes and links that we simply cannot understand or even identify them all, so our control of nature is largely an illusion, and an allusion to our own lack of stewardship. So what happens when the network starts to break down? If species are nodes, then in this, the sixth great extinction, what we're seeing is the loss of our points of orientation and connection, just as if we slowly, or suddenly, lost all our financial information and access to our money because of online pollution. But now that the Savannah River is available online to anyone in the world with an internet connection, anyone who wants to become a meaningful part of the network can, and they are thus creating and mapping the river's identity, which then becomes a part of each person's database. It gets on their radar, so to speak, and might then appear valuable enough to save. Being online allows the coordination amongst many diverse nodes that have something at stake on the Savannah River, just as everyone involved in Detroit's network has a stake in its ethos and success. But just as RISE can't end by perpetuating a myth of progress, neither can the Intelligent River Project. Rhetorics of hyperbole and pathos are rampant in environmental issues, and they're only so successful, usually only reach audiences who are already amenable to them. Networks operate by group consensus, like Wikipedia or Reddit, where the minority is deleted or relegated to the deep abyss of the blogosphere. As Rice points out, this can limit the rationality with which networks can function, and sometimes group consensus is driven by motives and rhetoric that run counter to the greater good. But these are limitations we have to ultimately make peace with, and knowing how psychology coordinates with the digital can help stakeholders be heard. Clemson touts the Intelligent River as yet another example of the university's strength as a leader in green and sustainable initiatives across disciplines. This innovation of digitizing the river may prove to be one of the most successful approaches to watershed management and will at the very least foster greater awareness and engagement with the natural world, since, ironically, so much of our engagement now takes place online. Thank you.